Okay, hello everybody. Chemical plant fire, schmimical plant schmeyer is what I always say. It's a favorite motto of mine. And so we are now going to go over this review sheet here. As I'm looking at the review sheet, sometimes when I have time, I just make a brand new review sheet. Other times I pull up previous year's review sheet over the same unit. And as I look at this thing, it's a little bit of a mess. Because if you look at it, and let's make it big. Can we do that? There we go. So you got the philosophers, and then you go a little while, then you got the philosophers again. So like I said, that's a little bit of a mess, but you only got to know about them one time. All right, so let's get rolling with them. And I don't know, I'll just kind of go back and forth in terms of maybe what you ought to know about them, and maybe make some adjustments on the sheet. In particular, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of three things on this. That's on the PowerPoint, but I didn't cover it. All right, so let's get rid of those. And it might be we kind of add things, and it might be that, since we missed the day of the test and the test is now not till Tuesday, I might just print out a new and improved review sheet. We'll see. We'll see what happens at the end of this sucker. All right, so we're starting out with Plato, and there he is. All right, so his book's The Republic, and remember his big giant definition about justice, and the bottom line is it ends up being about, what makes a good person, that reason rules over desire and spirit. Okay, so there's the three definitions of justice. And remember what he does is he dispenses with each one of those definitions. There's times where you don't pay back somebody who's loaned you a weapon when he's not in his right mind. Loyalty is sometimes good, sometimes not. I mean, the Nazis and the Confederates were loyal. And that last definition, Thrasymachus, he says, really, there's no such thing as justice might makes right. And Socrates just kind of dodges that when he says, well, sometimes people in charge do what's not in their interest. All right. As much as I love Plato, I'm not going to spend as much time with him on the review sheet as I did on the, in class. He got a whole class and a half, didn't he? But so I'm going kind of quick. Remember, he tells that Ring of Gyges story because, it might be that we're doing good things just for the rewards we get because we want everybody to cheer for us and tell us how good we are for good grades and so forth. And if we're invisible, we do bad things. And then he asks that question, well, who's happier, the good unpopular man, the good and hated man, or the popular no good man? So he says, well, maybe let's imagine a perfect place we can see justice better. So that's when he starts talking about what it looks like. And it ends up being kind of a messed up place with no families in it. And he says, well, y'all think that because it's like, y'all like prisoners in a cave. And you just got these prejudices. But even from our eyes, this looks like, 2,300 years later, it looks like a terrible place to live. So maybe he's just telling us what justice looks like inside of us. That reason needs to be in charge. Okay, so then that brings us to Aristotle. So Aristotle is much more practical. He says that you don't want to really attack traditional values head on. If traditional values include a belief in slavery or some kind of awful racism, sexism, something that we look back on and, are glad we moved past that. You want to do that kind of slowly and gently, and so very similar to the way the Constitution handles things, slow change. And he also talks about the golden mean between extremes. And so we kind of looked at, the extreme and the deficiency of all these values. Hey, on this day of the Sonoraville game, let's remember that we said school spirit means you're not involved in anything. Too much school spirit is when you insult the other side, and you get carried away insulting the other side. So we want to find the mean on school spirit, and so Aristotle, I think, would very much approve of Hawaiian shirt day. Okay. Let's see. So that's Aristotle. He says, the key to politics is good habits. All right. Let's keep going. So Machiavelli is the turning point. And so he says you want to be ruthless, so that's Lyndon Johnson, that's Trump, Bill Clinton to an extent. You do what you got to do. The ends justify the means, so anytime you hear a story of a ruthless leader, that leader would be described as Machiavellian. All right, so then you get into modern political philosophy, and these are the ones that are probably more relevant to us because they say, imagine this state of nature. And Hobbes said it'd be terrible. We'd all be killing each other like Lord on the Flies, and even big bad guys are going to be scared because we can hit them over the head with a rock when they go to sleep. So that means you obey any old government because any government protects you from the state of nature, even a government led by a really bad guy. All right, the most important one, or at least one of the two most important guys from our point of view, is Locke. So I'm going to slow down on him just for a second. I think I'm going to try to send you something else on him. I would say look for more questions on Locke than the other guys because he's the guy behind the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson was quoting for him. So he says state of nature is just inconvenient because people might come steal your coconuts when you take a nap in the state of nature. They're probably not going to slit your throat, but they're going to steal your stuff. So you want to leave the state of nature if a government, you're convinced this government's going to protect your life, liberty, and property. And so you only obey a pretty good government, one that protects your natural rights. All right. And you've got so what you do is you give your consent to be governed. So you get that in the Declaration of Independence. And you withdraw your consent. Let's put that word in there. Real big and let's put it big and slanty and underlined. I'm just feeling the word consent. All right, you consent to be governed by a good, decent government, but you withdraw your consent. We withdraw our consent to be governed if it's not a good government. All right, so that's Locke. And let's go over here and find him. So there's, when Washington's crossing the Delaware, he has withdrawn his consent to be ruled by the tyrannical British. All right. So Rousseau is the guy that tells that happy story about the state of nature, that in the state of nature we're all like those happy blue people on Avatar or My Dog Fraser, and we don't have many worries. And it's society that causes us to get all anxious and so forth. And so we were better off in the state of nature, and the only government that we ought to obey is one that does the will of the people, really kind of direct democracy. And you got that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, about, civilization screwing up these tribes' very happy life. Got to watch that sometime. All right, and then our other guy, real important one, is Montesquieu, because he's got to talk about separation of powers. Doesn't make sense. I believe it was Eduardo who was going to make the speed limit, then he was going to pull himself over if he was speeding, and then he was going to pay himself with a ticket. That doesn't make any sense. Not going to work. No man's fit to be judged in his own case. So you need those things to be separate. All right, so Montesquieu's the guy who has that idea. Madison's, I almost called him Montesquieu. Madison is going to copy from him when he's writing the Constitution after the Articles of Confederation turned out to be too weak. Okay, so then let's check the review sheet. I believe that's as far as we went. Yeah. All right, so then the next thing, so there's all those guys. And if you take a look at them the second time around, so let's add, Locke and consent. And let's make it big again. I'm just feeling that word consent. All right. So in our, we consent to be governed. If it's going to be a good government, decent government, it's going to protect our rights. If it doesn't, we withdraw our consent. Everybody say consent, 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 consent. All right, let's have a consent race. Consent, consent, consent. I wasn't really that fast. You might have beat me. All right, so, look at that. So you got all these things, and, we talked about it. So, all that stuff we just talked about. So in between all this stuff, we have the 10 steps to the revolution. So if we go down, 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 we're not doing those. We did a little caucus, so that was kind of fun. All right, so then there we go. So remember, you had the Proclamation of 1763 saying don't move west. Then you got the first of the taxes that's really kind of enforcing these laws. And then the big one was the Stamp Act, that was the tax on paper. The Sons of Liberty boycotted things, and they intimidated the tax agents, and kind of overcame the Stamp Act. All right, so then the British said, hey, we've got the right to tax you. So the Townshend Act was that fun one, glass, lead, paper, paint, and tea. That led to the Boston Massacre, and they only kept the tax on tea, kind of like the Declaratory Act. And then they passed the Tea Act, was that monopoly, that British East India Company, which led to the British East India Company, the Boston Tea Party, where they dumped, it was like $1.5–2 million worth of tea overboard. And the Intolerable Acts is going to close the ports and the legislatures, no town meetings until the colonists pay them back. Which led to the first shots at Lexington and Concord. And so the Second Continental Congress, appoints these guys, Jefferson especially, to write the Declaration of Independence. All right, so that's those 10 steps. Let's go back to the rule sheet here. That's the wrong one. This one. Get rid of this. Okay. All right, so let's look at what we got. Okay, so then, if we go down here, we're going to the story of the Articles. All right, so let's go back up. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doo. I'm going to talk about this stuff. And then we need to talk about whether that's on there. I'm not sure we covered that. We did an AP. All right. So there we go. Getting to the right topic. Here we go. All right. So there's the Articles. So we did this. All right. So we called it kind of the pre-Constitution Constitution. Firm league of friendship between the states. Strong states, weak national government. There's 9 states passed law, 13 amend the Constitution. All right. The president had a 1-year term and was a member of the legislative branch. So there wasn't an executive branch. All right. Let's take note of that because everybody was telling me it was 9 states to amend the Constitution. So 9 states to pass a law. If you're going to make any changes, give the power tax, which it didn't have the power. It's going to take all 13 states. All right. Okay. All right, so here's what it could do. It could make laws, treaties, raise armies, declare war, but, there's an asterisk on all those things. It needed 9 states to make a law. States could also make treaties. It had to ask states for armies. You could declare war, but, again, you can only fight that war with the army that you ask states for. All right, no rest. That's what it couldn't do. Couldn't regulate trade. Couldn't enforce the law, couldn't settle disputes. Most important thing, probably couldn't tax. All right, hey, if the government can't tax, can't do anything. Can't pay for anything, can't do anything. All right, so then Shays' Rebellion comes along. In Massachusetts, these indebted farmers are losing everything. They're being taxed too much by the state. And then they're breaking the law. They're breaking their buddies out of debtors' prison, and they're taking over the courthouses. All right, so first they had a meeting in Annapolis. Nobody hardly showed up, so then you're going to have this meeting in Philadelphia. That's the Constitutional Convention. Father of the Constitution is going to be James Madison, and he's coming up with the Virginia Plan. All right, let's see what this says over here. What are we looking at? So there's Annapolis, there's Philadelphia. So let's throw Madison in there. Madison, whoop. All right. And so the 3 compromises. You're going to have the Great Compromise, the 3/5 Compromise, and the Slave Trade Compromise. So 2 of them are on slavery. When you're counting people for the population of the House of Representatives, you count 3 of every 5, which is controversial because it seems to imply that a slave is 3/5 of a person. So some racism kind of baked into the Constitution there. They kept the slave trade for 20 years. Everybody knew that Middle Passage was really bad. All right, but maybe more importantly is this Great Compromise here. So Madison proposed the Virginia Plan to get rid of the Articles Confederation and have a 3-branch government based on Montesquieu. And so the House of Representatives The bigger the population, the more power a state has. So that's based on the Virginia plan. So remember, there's 435 members of the House of Representatives. All right, the Senate, there's 100 members of the Senate, 2 per state. So that's based on the New Jersey plan, the small state plan, where every state is equal. All right, and so the Great Compromise put those two things together. And this may be the greatest achievement of the Constitution, that there's never been a big fight between the big states and the little states. Northern states and southern states, sectional division, but not size of the state. So they solved that problem. All right. So then you got the ratification. Let's go up here to the review sheet. All right. Oh, look at that. It's not the New York plan. Stupid, bad typing, McKenzie. What's the matter with you? All right, a J is not a Y. The New Jersey plan in the Senate. Okay, so the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So remember, the Federalists thought this was a good plan. So they support the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists opposed it, and they just wanted to amend the articles, but that's impossible to do. You need 13 states to do it. But they're worried that the government's going to be too strong. Government's going to be too far away, remote from the people. So two things about the government: too strong, too far away from the people. And then you're not going to be respecting states' rights. You're taking away states' rights, when you're taking away power from the states like they had in the Articles of Confederation, you're not respecting people's rights. Okay, and then president's too much like a king, and the Electoral College. The founders showed they're just, it's elitist. It's not showing trust for the common man. Doesn't mean we don't respect the dignity, the equal dignity of common people who weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, who didn't win the birth lottery that we grew up, kind of privileged and middle class, won. But on the other hand, if you're concerned that people are not going to be thinking straight, you want to be careful about how much political power you give them, because you've got the problem of the tyranny of the majority. So it's complicated. All right. Ends up being 6 concerns, right? What? Government's too big, it's too far away. States' rights, people's rights. President's too much like a king, and the Electoral College is undemocratic. Let's go ahead and turn that window in with 6. I bet it's switched back. This PowerPoint has a mind of its own. But at any rate, all right, let's check our review sheet. 6 concerns. Okay, so then, my goodness, we should have the Declaration of Independence up here. That ain't no good. All right, and it ought to be up here around, the 10 things. Where's the 10 things? It ought to be up here, Declaration of Independence. All right, but we'll throw in some Declaration of Independence stuff. So we've got those words, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If any government doesn't protect these rights, you get rid of it. So you've got the consent to be governed by this good government, and you've got the right to revolt if it takes away, if it's not protecting your rights. All right, so the social contract is very much in there. It's a deal between the government and the people. The government protects your rights. The people obey the government. It's conditional. All right, so then you got the preamble there. All right, let's see if we can find us a preamble. There's Federalist. All right, so let's go over here. There we go. So, good gracious, this is all over the place, isn't it? All right, so there's the Federalists. These folks are, they're the guys that are defending the Constitution. You got the big 3, Hamilton, Madison, and Jay. And for our purposes, Madison ends up being the most important. He wrote Federalist 10 and 51. Now, Hamilton wrote like 60 of the 85. He wrote more of them than anybody else. Legendary for his work ethic. But the 2 that we're concerned with right now are written by Madison. All right, and remember, you got to get the cool kids. You got to get the movers and the shakers. If it's going to have legitimacy, even if you got the requisite number, you got to get these folks on your side. All right, so they're trying to get New York Anti-Federalists, and so there's Federalist 10. All right. Okay. Let's look at what the review sheet says here. Okay, look at that. 2 ways to remove. So the problem is faction. Everybody always knows that. All right, and then it's these next 2 things that everybody screws up on. So what do you do about it? You can remove the causes of faction. Okay, what are the causes of faction? 2 of them. All right. Number 1, freedom. All right. Here. The causes of faction. So freedom is a cause of faction. We hang out with who we want to because we want to. So you can get rid of that by taking away liberty. All right. The other way you can get rid of a cause of faction is make everybody exactly the same, which is logically impossible. Ooh, you know what we need? Man, how many years did it take me to come up with this? What's this? Good gracious, Mackenzie. Everybody watching out there in video land say good gracious, Mackenzie. All right. Oh my gosh. Images. Okay. Blue dress, gold dress. There we go. All right, so which one should I use here? This one? All right. Okay. And we'll put it over here. And look at there. So there's Madison. So that's impossible. You can try to make everybody just the same, but, we see a blue dress or a gold dress in that little thingy. All right, so you can either take away freedom. You remove the causes by taking away freedom. That's evil. Or you remove the causes by making everyone the same. That's impossible. So you don't want to remove the causes. What you want to do is control the effects with a large republic. All right? Bigger is better, which is not what the Greeks had thought. They thought you need a small country where everybody knows better. Everybody. All right, so that is his argument right there. Federalist 10. Okay, Federalist 51, he's got the eloquent stuff. And so he's got the anti-federalists on his mind who are saying, hey, this government's too strong. So he says, well, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. He's kind of making a Hobbes argument. Then they're saying, but look, this government's going to be too strong. All right, but look, it's going to be the just right government because you're going to have the external controls. If it's screwing up, you vote him out. If you're not happy with Trump and all his shenanigans, all right, vote him out. All right, if leaders within the government feel like somebody in the government's breaking the law, especially judges who are on there forever, you can impeach them. You can, president can veto laws. Congress can override vetoes. Oh, I eat that apple. There's the checks and the balances. Okay. All right. So that's the Federalist 51 argument. All right. Let's go over here and see what we got. So we're kind of doing okay. So you control the effects, spread them out. All right. So then we're looking at charts. All right. So I don't really have. Let's see what I have on the PowerPoint because we drew this one. But separation of powers. First, I need to know the definition. 3 branches, each with its own job. Okay, so what do we got? Oh, gosh. All right, so then we're going back to the preamble. All right, so there it is. You memorized it. And so we kind of look at what each one of them means. So we the people. So these are the goals. So we the people are making this. Here's our goals. We want a more perfect union. Improve on the articles. We want fairness, justice. We want peace at home. We don't want all these riots and all that sort of thing. We want a strong military. We want people not starving to death, even if these welfare programs are controversial sometimes. And we want freedom. We want all those things. So that's 6 goals. What does it say? How many goals do I have? The answer is 6. 6. 7 articles. Where's the dang preamble thing? Here, let's add that in there. 6 goals. Who makes it? And who is it for? So we the people are making this government, and it's for ourselves and our posterity, the future generations. Okay, so there's that. All right, so then there's the 7 articles, and let's see if we can find it. Yeah, so there we go. Legislative, executive, judicial in that order. All right, relations between states. The amendment process is number 5. 6, Supremacy Clause. 7, ratification process. All right. So just kind of all over the place with this. All right, and then we've got limited government stuff. Okay. There's the ways of amending the Constitution. So it's 2/3. Both houses of Congress, 2/3 of a convention, which never happened since the Constitution was ratified, because the one time they did it, the Constitutional Convention, they threw the whole plan out. 3/4 state legislatures, which happened 26 times once the 21st Amendment state convention was used. All right, so that's amendment process. Okay, so then you got limited government concepts. All right, so definition of separation of powers. 3 branches, each with its own job. So remember on our tic-tac-toe, across the top, legislative, executive, judicial. Legislative is also called the Congress, they make laws. Executive branch called the President, he proposes and enforces. Judicial branch called the courts, they interpret and review. But remember, so I think we'll do okay on that. Make sure you know the definition. 3 branches, each with his own job. Okay, checks and balances. You want no branch too strong. Madison came up with that. So Montesquieu, I didn't say that in class. Montesquieu came up with the idea of separation of powers. But to that, Madison's going to add these checks and balances to make sure this strong government's not too strong. All right, so you got maybe a little too many in the details here. Judicial branch has judicial review. They're nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate. Okay, the president can veto, and then remember it went, oh, I eat that apple, override, impeach, approve, treason, appointments. That's what the Congress can do, the president. A lot of checks on the president because they even were aware, the founders were aware of the anti-federalist concern that the president's too much like a king. All right, federalism. All right, so it's an almost tic-tac-toe with one horizontal line across the top, but then it's just 3 columns. Powers divided between the national government and the states. So, national powers called delegated powers, war, money, foreign policy. Okay, state powers called reserve powers, police, education, elections, licenses. All right, and I think maybe the bell rang when we were doing this. So when we walk in for the first, you go ahead and look at it. When you walk in for the first time, we'll talk about it together. All right, and then what do I got? Then there's concurrent powers. They're shared, and it's TLC, taxes, laws, courts. Everybody's got to, all governments got to pay for stuff with taxes, and every government, that national government, state, got to obey the laws. If you get in trouble, you got to go to court. Okay. Yeah, we didn't really do that. All right, let's look at the review sheet. So that pretty much brings us to where we are. Okay, 5 constitutional principles. Well, 3 of them we just went over. All right, so I'm just going to tell you 2 more. Limited government. All right, that means government is not all powerful. So so 3 limitations are separation of powers, checks and balances, federalism. All right, limited government is kind of the overall limit. Power of government is just this general principle saying, there's certain things the government can do. And then the other one is going to be rule of law. Government and the people obey the law. Let me go up there on the PowerPoint. If we go up, it's going to come up somewhere. It's coming. There it is. Those 2. All right, the idea is to get excellence, so we don't want tyranny, we don't want dictatorship, rule of law. The government has to obey the law, so, when president disobeys the law or judges disobey the law, they might get impeached and convicted. All right, and then the people are supposed to obey the law. We have situations in which people are not necessarily obeying the law. So, I mean, we have questions being raised there. I'll go ahead and say, hey, he's cool, right? But I don't like him. He's like the Pied Piper. Makes us think this stuff's okay. All right. There's things I like about him. He coaches football teams in Compton. He means well, but I profoundly disagree with him that this stuff is just cool and harmless. All right, so there's your Habitudes lesson for the day. All right, and there we go. All right, let's see what happens. All right, make sure you turn, if it turns out that I try to stop it and then nothing happens, you see that there's another 3 or 4 minutes on the tape. What you want to do is turn the volume down because I'm probably cussing at that point. All right, I'm going to go right here.